What's up, Taiwan? I'm Laurel Stewart with the news from here in Taiwan and around the world. India and Pakistan are accusing one another of breaking a ceasefire in Kashmir just hours after the truce was announced. John Van Trieste reports.
Flashes in the sky pierced the evening calm in Kashmir, threatening to end a ceasefire reached just hours before, and dashing hopes of a de-escalation in one of the world's big flashpoints. Nuclear-armed rivals India and Pakistan both claim Kashmir. And after a terror attack in the region killed 26 tourists, India blamed Pakistan, sparking the worst fighting between the two countries in decades. The two sides agreed to hit pause on Saturday in a surprise announcement from Washington, bringing celebration and hopes for peace in Kashmir.
We thank God for this ceasefire announcement. It's a relief for us Kashmiris and all the Indian states. War doesn't solve anything. We will sleep soundly tonight. The war has kept us awake.
Now, though, India and Pakistan both say the other side has broken the truce.
We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address these violations and deal with the situation with seriousness and responsibility. The armed forces are maintaining a strong vigil on the situation. They have been given instructions to deal strongly with any instances of a repetition of the violations of the borders along the international border as well as the line of control.
Pakistan says it hasn't made any violations, but their foreign ministry says it's India breaching the agreement. And their forces are handling the situation with responsibility and restraint. Some analysts had questioned from the beginning whether the truce could hold, but say the stakes are high, both in Kashmir and beyond.
This is, of course, a conflict between two nuclear-armed states. The possibility of escalation was something that wasn't just important to India and Pakistan, but was important to all of their neighbors and really the whole world.
The question now is whether the two sides will go back to the negotiating table and stop a flare-up that's killed dozens, including children, from growing. Dolphin Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Kuomintang legislator Xu Xingyin's job is safe for now. That's as a campaign to recall her failed to gather enough signatures by the deadline. Videos posted online show supporters of the recall rushing to submit petitions at the last minute, but they fell short, missing the target by about 2,000 signatures. In a Facebook post, Xu thanked her supporters and said she would serve the people of Hsinchu County with greater humility. Her case is just one of several second-stage petitions filed over the weekend. Results from other campaigns are expected in May and June. If enough signatures are confirmed, those efforts will move on to the next step, a public vote. Dozens of lawmakers from both the KMT and the Democratic Progressive Party are facing similar recall drives. Former Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen is in Lithuania, a country she helped strengthen ties with during her time in office. While there, Tsai toured Europe's largest vertical farm, a project built with help from Taiwanese engineers. She also praised Lithuania for its shared commitment to democracy. Back in 2021, Lithuania made headlines by opening the Taiwanese representative office in Vilnius, the first in Europe to use the name Taiwanese instead of Taipei. China, which claims Taiwan, strongly objected. In response, Beijing downgraded diplomatic ties and imposed trade restrictions on Vilnius. To find out more about Tsai's trip to Europe, Leslie Liao spoke with Lithuanian legislator Arūnas Valinskas.
Can you tell me if you know anything about, the planning behind this trip, or whether or not Lithuanian officials were involved?
Myself personally was not involved in the planning of this trip, but I'm glad nevertheless. And yes, there were indicators that this trip was somewhat in the works for a long time. And I mean, given the level of the officials that will be involved, it's no surprise.
Besides continuity in diplomatic relations between Taiwan and this trip means.
I'm glad what this trip and what this visit and what the people involved in this visit symbolizes is that the relationship, the establishment or the elevation, shall we say, of the relationship between Lithuania and Taiwan was not sort of a one-off fluke. It was not just a popular thing to do to sort of, offend China or whatever they might want us to believe. That it is a lasting thing that will have many interesting iterations, lasting, and it's based on things that are in development and will remain in development for the foreseeable future. That it's something that has a lot of content to it, and there are very high-ranking profile people, both in Lithuania and Taiwan, that are interested in maintaining this bond that we have and develop and strengthening it.
Our former president, Ing-wen, is going to meet with your former president, Grybauskaitė. What can be said about the meeting of these two leaders?
One thing that I would like to underline is that Dalia Grybauskaitė is likely one of the most well-respected ex-officials in Lithuania. So her participation in this visit certainly elevates it and signifies the importance that our politicians and people who actually pay attention to what's going around the world, how they approach it. Official meetings between our current government and visitors from Taiwan obviously are, shall we say, difficult. But given that, I believe the participation of such other high-ranking ex-politicians, such as Dalia Grybauskaitė, is, in a way, the second best thing.
What can you tell me about Lithuania's stance on its ties with Taiwan?
After the change of government, just like about half a year ago, there were talks of needing to revisit our issues with China and our distancing with China, especially giving our previous stances of Taiwan. We had several comments made by our president and so on and so forth. So there was always this talk of whether this pivot to Taiwan instead of China, shall we say, is the right thing to do. I treat them more or less as background noise, and I have no indications that I should do otherwise. And there's no serious movement, at least that I know of, and that at least that I've noticed, to actually implement serious change regarding our relationship with Taiwan.
That was Lithuanian legislator Arūnas Valinskas. South Korea's Conservative People Power Party has reinstated Kim Moon-soo as its presidential candidate, just hours after cancelling his nomination, as internal tensions grow ahead of the June 3rd election. The reversal came after party members failed to rally around a replacement, former Prime Minister and acting President Han Duck-soo. The party faces a tough fight against the opposition Democratic Party, while still reeling from the fallout of former President Yoon Suk-yeol's removal. Yoon was removed from office after declaring martial law in December. A leading candidate to head the UK's foreign spy agency is drawing scrutiny over past positions some say were too soft on China. Barbara Woodward, Britain's current ambassador to the United Nations and a former ambassador to China, is in the running to lead MI6, the UK's foreign intelligence agency. But her candidacy is raising eyebrows. Critics point to what they see as her reluctance to challenge China over its treatment of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Yet her shortlist is historic. All three candidates for the role are women, a milestone for an agency that's never had a woman at the top. Taiwan's waters are teeming with life, home to nearly 10% of the world's marine species. But rising ocean temperatures are putting that rich ecosystem at risk, and mass coral bleaching is already taking a toll. To learn more, our reporter Jeffrey Chen sat down with Anna Lu Tan, director of White Flower, a film that dives into Taiwan's underwater world and its fight to protect it.
So I know you study neuroscience, film, and critical theory. That's a rather unique and interesting combination. How did these different studies inspired you and influence your filmmaking process?
I always felt like the disciplines were never quite separate. Whenever I approached science, it was with the heart of a poet. And I always had this feeling of that these disciplines were never really separate. So when I studied these, when I deepened my study of science and ecology, marine ecosystems, it only strengthened my conviction to want to communicate this to the rest of the world. There seemed to be a massive chasm between the scientific community and the general public. And I thought the medium of film, an artistic medium, one that provokes your affective self, your feelings, could be a pedagogical tool to basically raise consciousness in a different way and make that very vital scientific information that like the entire scientific community of the world has been building on and accumulating, but it remains siloed and isolated and maybe difficult to understand for most people. So I felt this is where I can come in and help to bridge this gap of understanding.
So this speaks to the interconnectedness of our lives and coral reefs. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
That's a big theme of the film, and there's kind of even, I felt the coral reef itself was kind of an embodiment of the interconnectedness that was kind of at the foundation of what I wanted to communicate, was to show that humans were not outside of nature, but a part of it. And I think that's kind of like a fallacy that we're kind of living with, this idea of separateness. But based on the empirical data and the consensus of the scientific community, our fates are intrinsically linked. And if the coral reef goes, so do we, so do 1 billion people and their livelihoods, the coastal people who live on the coast, people who rely on the protein of the ocean. 25% of the marine life depends on these coral reefs to survive. So just based on the facts, we are connected. And so I just wanted to bring that to light for more and more people so we can save this very precious ecosystem before it's too late.
And were there any moments during the production and filming that challenged your expectations or changed the way you see the ocean and marine ecology? I
learned a lot of new things from the different scientists and research groups in Taiwan. Some of the main points I want to convey is that there's basically, I'll say, two main threats to the coral reef ecosystem everywhere, but specifically in Taiwan, well, we have the massive one, which is the greenhouse gases being added to the atmosphere, which causes global heating, and the ocean takes a lot of the brunt of that heating. So that's what causes the bleaching, acidification, and so if it just tips just the right amount, the entire coral reef ecosystem is bleached. And there's this algal symbiotic partner with the coral, zooxanthellae, that gets expelled at a certain point if it gets heated too much, the water. So that's the tipping point thing that's really important. If we can keep that like base structure, the corals itself, which is a living animal, alive, then we can keep an entire ecosystem alive. So we have to look at the kind of quality of the water. So things like mismanagement of coastal mismanagement. So things where you're building along the coast that allows for like sedimentation to like enter the water, river runoff, these kind of just direct, debris and things that like change the chemistry of the water. We can avoid that. That is so doable. We can do that right now, and we really should. And we could be saving a lot of our beautiful like ecosystem here. And yeah, I think that's what's really cool is like whenever I show this film to Taiwanese people, they immediately care so much. They're immediately concerned about protecting it.
That was director Anna Lu Tan. You can watch the full interview with her on Zoom In, Zoom Out, available on YouTube and TaiwanPlus.com. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, take a look at these motorbike enthusiasts gathering for the Harley-Davidson Euro Festival in France. I'm Laurel Stewart. Take care and see you next time.